Welcome, everyone. Dr. Thor here. Let's talk about something very interesting. Get ready for Gnosis. Well, we're going to talk about practical time travel and something that I did do some fair research on. In the 90s, all of the alternative sciences, free energy, time travel, warps, all the different things, the Montauk Project, you name it, was really big out there. The Philadelphia experiment. There's a lot of literature that was put together and offered out there, books and everything else. And I used to sell these reports for many years because everybody's very curious. And these are little snippets from books, from rare magazines, etc. We saved a lot of information and we used to distribute this, and they were very popular. And people love little booklets. Nobody really wants to read a lot. But time travel is a very interesting subject, and there was a couple of people. We also published I think there were 5 or 6 books by the infamous Stephen Gibbs, the mental case person who invented the HD hyperdimensional resonator based on the movie Back to the Future. And basically it was just kind of a hybrid radionic machine with a giant electromagnet that you put next to yourself so you would hallucinate. But it was a fun little thing, and we never sold it with the magnet, but we did sell the devices, and we also built the devices for a while. So that we could, and sold the books. So all of those things were part of the process. And of course, Gibbs and his other groups of little kind of nut jobs that he was around, Goofball, a Norwegian pilot who was as wacky as crazy as a box of frogs. He was involved with some woman who's another nut job. So there was a whole group of this, and he is very autistic and strange and never really claimed he time traveled. He talked about it. He wrote little booklets, which are all very interesting. The whole idea is research is research. We never sold anything as factual information. You get bits and pieces, you put them together, maybe you can figure something out. There was another person called David French who was out there selling different booklets, and some other person that he actually wrote a bunch of stuff, and that was out there as well. All this is kind of lost in the reality that's out there. Things were sold for a period of time or didn't. Unfortunately, because of political harassments, a lot of this information was lost, and everything that goes with that. So, and a lot of really good information, unfortunately. And what's out there now is a bunch of junk. There's a bunch of fantasists writing garbage. Need we go on and on and on with all this? So it's important that everyone understands that, but there is some practical time travel that you can get into. And that's what all these little booklets were. They weren't about creating some giant super $1 trillion machine using a huge amount of electricity to do some warps. This is all extremely dangerous and, quite frankly, impossible to do. It costs too much. It's dangerous. You're going to suck huge amounts of electricity. It's just not going to work well. So what were you trying to do? Well, the way to do basic time travel is through breaking dimensions, and you usually do this at some sort of vortex area. Now, I did work, tried to create my own vortexes and so forth. This didn't work too well. But you have to go and douse out at a vortex area. Where would be the best place to do some time travel, some dimensional, some straight time travel? And how do you control all that? Well, of course, one of the most powerful vortexes there are is Giant Rock near Landers, California. Very powerful place there. The Mental Physics Institute isn't too far away. There's a Marine base. I mean, this is a place where UFOs are seen all the time, where George Van Tassel had his Integratron, and there's a huge giant rock there, the largest standing rock in the world by itself. Rock by itself, I'm not sure what they call that. So, and this was a place where ancient tribes gathered, where there was, I believe, was connected to some sort of Atlantean at some ancient time. But this is a place that went for many stages. Was also near there was a little private airport, and George Van Tassel held giant UFO meetings there. And there are vortex spots there, spots where there are Earth disruptions. And this allows you to kind of program these disruptions for a lot of things. One of them is to try and time travel. Now, I did this personally myself, and will give you my experiences. And there's also another guy that did very similar to this in Sedona. He got a professional dowser. They went out to some power spots, and they actually dowsed out a place to put what you would construct, which is basically a copper tube framing. This copper tube framing you would connect up to two radionic machines, which you would dial in times and places. But when you set these things up, you would cause a time rift to a certain extent. Now, the guy in Sedona who did this claimed that he set it up and really had no memory of doing anything. And apparently, well, it makes sense if you create a time travel device that you go through one end and come out the other, well, you're going to be in the same place. So what happened to him is that he did this, didn't remember, and of course this is one of the physical problems you run into with physical time travel. When you go through vortexes and dimensions, it messes you up. Most people come back sick without proper memories, etc. So he didn't really recall doing anything, but a week later he had a bunch of furniture that he supposedly ordered delivered to his house. So he couldn't quite remember doing it, but this was a strange occurrence after it. After that, I didn't hear much from him, and it was part of, I'm not sure what happened. That certainly is a bizarre type of time travel, and I'm not even sure that's time travel. But something happened where he went through a vortex. Maybe it was a day or two prior or so forth. We just don't know how that worked. But it's an interesting little story. The main thing you did, and what I did there, is, of course, you then you make a little, looks like a door frame. And you make this out of copper. You stand it up. You make sure the copper that goes into the ground about 18 inches, that then connects into this door frame. And of course, you can do this with copper they kind of are like Tinker Toys when you do this with copper tubing that people use for plumbing. So the whole idea is how these things are done to create this vortex. Now, what you do is you actually then connect radionic machines, because what you want to try and do is tune in dates and places. You have one radionic machine that you dial into the vibrational frequency of a date. The other radionic machine, you connect this to each side of the actual vortex door. The other side is hooked up to a place. And you try and, when it's a place or something, you try and get an artifact from there or something similar to that. So if you want to go to Egypt, maybe a little bit of sand would be there. And of course, you can then tune in the date if you want to go present time, past time, future time. You can dial that in as well. Now, this is, again, connected to the actual door. It's like a door frame made all out of copper tubing, usually 3/4 inch. It's then set in the ground, and then, of course, you are trying to create this energy field. Now, you have to find the right spot. So dowsing is important, and you have to be good at it. So we tried this a couple of times and weren't really able to find a strong enough energy vortex there. We did finally get a strong enough energy vortex and set the machine there, and we could kind of see a bluish energy created in the door. Very fascinating. Now, are you crazy enough to go through there? Well, I wasn't. But what we actually did was things like we would put things on a pole and we would stick it through there. Or we would throw things through there. So we made up kind of little spears with things attached to it. One of them was a camera, and we threw it through. And of course, it disappeared, and we never did get that camera back. Then we tried, of course, to put things on poles and stick them through, and then pull them back. Well, this caused a bunch of energetic problems, and we were not able to really get any pictures. You put the camera on automatic shutter speeds, where it clicked away automatically after a few seconds, and stuck it through there, but we were unable to get any kind of good pictures. Things that came back were just washed out, and appeared not to show any shapes. Again, we threw rocks through, we threw some natural materials through, we threw some trash through, and we had it all dialed into the basic future of about 10 days away, because you want to be very exact. It was 10 days away, and we had it dialed into actually Egypt. So we were trying to get pictures of Egypt 10 days ahead from now. And trying to, now you can be even further than that. We actually tried to tune into the pyramids of it. Tried to be very exact here, not just where's Egypt. Egypt is a huge country. So we basically set into a large pyramid in Cairo, Egypt. We dialed into that. The more exact you are, the better. And of course, that's what we were trying to. So we did create some sort of phenomenon, but you must remember that it's very dangerous. You just can't pop out, and how do you get back? What is it? So you're assuming you pop out on the other side, and similar to a time machine, that is now created a portal that you can pop back through. Well, that's a good hypothesis, but it's extremely dangerous to do that. How do you test these things? How do you go through with them? Well, all of this is very nebulous and difficult to do. You try and amplify things and create things by using crystals and other things. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can do in your particular created doorway to try and energize it, to try and give it further empowerments. But the biggest problem is that where are you going? What's on the other side? Where do you end up? And even more critically, can you get back? So this is all completely and totally unknown, and it's very difficult to actually research this. If you could do it with some sort of cameras, of course, that would be helpful. But all of our camera experiments didn't work out very well. And these were things that, back then you didn't have the kind of little portable and cheap cameras that we have today. It was difficult to, it was difficult to get anything. You either had Polaroids or you had 35 millimeters. And we tried to use all of these. We took some photographs, Polaroid photographs of the actual door, and we showed that it was very much glowing. The Polaroid picked up the energy field around these things. Quite fascinating that you would show that you had created that once you found the proper vortex spot. So like so many things, if you want to get some amazing stuff done, and this could be just using even a radionic machine, doing some sort of ritual, or trying to reach higher consciousness states, etc., one of the things you can do is try and find some vortex spots that may be around your home. Now, generally, these things could be anywhere. It could be an empty lot near your house. It could be in somebody's house, and you will have certain power spots even within your house, and you need to go around and douse these things. You also need to douse if there's negative energy spots. This is another rarely thought about way of placing any type of your tools, particularly machines and your Triforce system boxes. All these things, it's a good idea to douse out what room is best to put it in, and then even where in that room to put it. So creating sacred space is very important to activate all your technologies on, something everybody doesn't pay much attention to because you generally put your equipment where it fits best. And of course, you may be forced to do that, but remember there are places to douse out in your home where it could be more powerful. Also, your yard. If you have a front or backyard, well, you can also douse that out. If you find a power spot, you certainly could go there and place your system there for a period of time, particularly your backyard. You could put a table over it, put your machine on it, and this would be something you could do in relative privacy, but it's going to activate it to much stronger levels. This is very important. This is like the same as eliminating toxic areas which you have blockages in your life. Now, everybody is blocked, and you need to alleviate these blocks by using sacred energy cloths, using clearing sprays, like banishing, protection, uncrossing. You spray a little spritz of this in where your machines and where you're doing some meditation and other rituals, and this is going to empower it. All of this is very, very powerful. So we all need to fully understand these little techniques, which can be enormous when you're trying to do amazing feats. So in general, if you want to find something really powerful, and there are lots of little spots, you have to do some research in your local area, maybe talk to some historical societies. I mean, haunted house places. These are places that may have major rifts in them. It may not be the best place to go because if there's, a lot of times haunted houses are just spirits. They're not evil, negative, or harmful spirits. But it does mean something's happening there. A lot of times there's Indian grounds, famous places where there's actual Indian burial grounds, Indian sacred land, places that are known to have certain energies, and you can go there and douse these things out. Go to the general area, then douse them out, usually using L rods. So you can walk around with these and see if you get a massive change in energy. So all of this is something that we have to be very cognizant of when you're looking for power spots. Of course, this is where you would try this type of, kind of outrageous experiments. I unfortunately never had enough time to continually go back there and try things. It just didn't work that way. You need a lot of time and energy, and even to be unstressed. These are full-time jobs if you want to be a researcher into these areas. Unfortunately, I never had that luxury to do that. But, you got to break time off. You got to do these kind of things, and this can... Again, you generate leaps and bounds of exactly what's happening with all these things. So we've got to keep this in mind as all these things go. So this is very critical to the use of any tools. And even if you want to go to a place, charge up crystals, bring your own stones, do meditations, all sorts of things you can use in these different places. Bring bottles of water and with you, and then leave them in an area, then take them home with you. This is a way to charge up your water with vortex water. What a fantastic additional tool you would have. So these are all the fun things that you can actually do out there to add a little excitement and fun to things, and gives you a little idea of where to research. I mean, there's all sorts of strange hidden spots that people don't generally talk about. They're either ignorant of it, or frankly, a lot of it's hidden. I mean, the particularly Native Americans and so forth, they don't want white men on their going out and messing with these energy spots. But there's all sorts of these out there, and you have to look into them and find out what's going on, douse it out, you go to a vortex spot, and then you douse the vortex spot to where it's most powerful within that vortex for what you're doing. So this is a little just synopsis of how these things are done in a particular way, and of course how radionics always plays keys into everything, because these are the kind of tools where you can tap into specific energies and dial in particular frequencies if you know what you're doing. So this is all part of the process. It's very exciting. It's very interesting, and just another dimension, which is certainly a lot of fun to anybody that wants to do something like this. So hopefully I have some plans in the future which will show people how to do this in my upcoming radionic books. It certainly will be something exciting and interesting to do, and fascinating type of research this is. And, don't be surprised if you get some wild, amazing effects. And be careful. Some of these things, if you go through a vortex and you can't come back, you just killed yourself, and God knows where you ended up. So, food for thought. I hope everybody enjoys this. Until next time.